I had not expected an invitation. Not really. Not after the silence. Not after the years of unanswered messages and birthdays spent alone. But there it was, a crisp ivory envelope with gold trim, sitting on my doormat in the morning sun. It was from Amir, my only son.
My boy.
Inside, the letter read, "You are cordially invited to the wedding of Amir Kaya and Layla Demir, to be held at the Saragan Palace, Istanbul." I stared at it for several minutes. Saragan Palace. A place reserved for royalty, celebrities, and people whose wealth was displayed in chandeliers and marble staircases. I could almost hear my mother's voice whispering, "You raised him well, Nian." But did I? He had not called. Not even a voice note. And now this? I walked slowly to the small cabinet where I kept precious things. Old photographs, my late mother's scarf, Amir's baby shoes. I picked up a worn photo. Amir at 6 years old, missing a front tooth, his arm wrapped around my neck, his eyes full of light. We used to be close. Until he left for university in London. That's when everything began to change. He became distant, colder. His messages became shorter. His visits home turned into excuses. I told myself he was busy, that he'd come back. But in truth, I felt him slipping away like sand through my fingers. I held the invitation against my chest. I didn't belong at the Saragan Palace. Not with my plain dresses and hands rough from years of work. But I would go. Not for the venue. Not for the grandeur. I would go because I am his mother. And I needed to see what kind of man he had become. I had only one dress suitable for an event like this, an old, deep emerald gown that once belonged to my mother. It had delicate embroidery along the hem, and though the color had faded slightly, it still held a quiet elegance. I tried it on in front of the mirror. It clung more tightly than I remembered, and the seams around the waist tugged just slightly. My hair, now peppered with silver, was swept into a low bun. I added her brooch to the collar, a touch of nostalgia. As I stood back, I didn't see a poor woman. I saw a mother who had survived. My neighbor, Selma, who had watched Amir grow up, came over just before I left. She hugged me tightly and whispered, "He will remember, Nian, even if it takes time." I wished I could believe her. I boarded the tram towards the Bosphorus, where the palace stood like a fortress of dreams. The city bustled around me, unaware of the storm inside my chest. Would he be happy to see me? Would he introduce me proudly to his bride's family? Or had he, in some way, erased me? I clutched my purse tighter. Whatever happened, I would carry myself with dignity. I was not here to beg for a place. I was here to remind him where he came from. The Saragan Palace gleamed beneath the late afternoon sun, its arches bathed in gold light. A red carpet ran along the entrance steps, where photographers stood, capturing smiles and diamond necklaces. I stepped out of the taxi and felt 100 eyes turn. I wasn't wearing designer. I wasn't carrying a gift wrapped in silk. But I held my chin high. At the gate, a young usher looked at me, hesitated, then glanced at his list. "Name?" "Nian Kaya," I said calmly. He frowned, searched the list, then nodded reluctantly. "Right this way, ma'am." Inside, everything smelled of roses and candle wax. The ceilings were painted with angels, and waiters floated past with silver trays. And there, in the grand ballroom, under crystal chandeliers, stood Amir, tall, handsome, in a tailored navy suit. He laughed with a group of guests, one hand resting casually on Layla's back. I froze. He looked so grown, so confident, and so far from the little boy who once held my hand crossing the street. As I stepped closer, his eyes met mine. And in that moment, everything changed. Amir walked towards me slowly, his expression unreadable. "Mum," he said finally, with a tight smile. "You came." His eyes dropped to my dress. The corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. Not quite disgust. Before I could speak, he leaned in and whispered, "You look too poor to be in a place like this." My heart didn't stop. It shattered silently, piece by piece. He pulled back, smiled for the people watching, and added under his breath, Try not to embarrass me, all right? I felt the air escape my lungs. All the love, the sacrifices, the nights I went hungry so he could eat, none of it mattered. Not in that moment. I looked at him, really looked, and I saw a stranger in my son's eyes. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply turned. I walked past rows of guests, their faces a blur, their laughter now sounding hollow. I passed the buffet table, the marble pillars, the grand staircase. And I walked out of the palace. I could still hear the music echoing behind me, a cruel reminder of where I had never belonged. I sat at the edge of the Bosphorus, my feet dangling above the dark water, and stared at the city lights dancing on the waves. How had we come to this? What had I done so wrong? My phone buzzed. A message from Selma. Let me know how it goes. Praying for you. I didn't reply. For the first time in my life, I felt truly invisible. Unbeknownst to me, someone had seen. Layla's aunt, a sharp-eyed woman with a spine like steel, had noticed the brief exchange between Amir and me. She leaned closer to Layla and asked, "Who is that woman your groom just insulted?" Layla frowned. His mother. "I think." "You think," her aunt echoed. Whispers began. Not loud, but enough to stain the edges of the celebration. She came alone. She looked humble. He barely acknowledged her. Layla approached Amir during the first dance. "Was that your mother?" He laughed nervously. "She's dramatic." She showed up uninvited. Layla paused. The invitation had her name. Amir's smile faltered, and something deep inside Layla began to turn. That night, I returned to my small flat in Fadi. I didn't turn on the lights. I sat on the floor and pulled out a shoebox from under the bed. Inside were Amir's drawings from primary school. A lopsided heart labeled, "I love you, Mum." A faded receipt from his first school uniform. His letter to Father Christmas asking for shoes, not toys. Each item was a relic of a boy who once adored me. Tears came then. Quiet, stubborn tears. But I didn't weep for him. I wept for the mother I had been. And the mother he had chosen to forget. A week passed. Then came a knock at the door. I opened it to find Layla. She wore no makeup, no heels. Just a soft scarf and eyes full of apology. "I found your address in Amir's things," she said. "May I come in?" I stepped aside. We sat with tea, and she listened, truly listened, as I told her about the boy Amir once was. "I don't know what happened," I said quietly, "but that boy is gone." Layla reached into her handbag and placed the wedding photo album on the table. "I wanted him to be honest with me, but he lied about you, about his past." She stood and gently held my hand. "You are not Pornian," she whispered. "He is." The next morning, Amir called. "Mum," he said hoarsely. Layla left me. I waited. I didn't mean it. What I said at the wedding. I just panicked. I thought that I'd ruin your image? I cut in. There was silence. "I'm sorry," he finally whispered. "Sorry," I said, "doesn't rebuild trust." He came to see me days later. No suit. No car. Just a man who'd lost more than he realized. "I miss you," he said. "You miss control," I answered. He nodded slowly. "Maybe. But I'm here." I closed the door without a word. Sometimes, love means letting them feel the cold they created. Months passed. I planted lavender in my windowsill. I laughed again with Selma over morning tea. I volunteered at a shelter on weekends, reading stories to children who still believed in warmth. One evening, I stood before the mirror in my mother's dress. It still fit. Not because I had shrunk, but because I had grown into it. Behind me on the mantelpiece sat a small photo, Amir as a boy, in a frame he had painted himself. I didn't know if he'd return. I didn't need to, because I had finally returned to myself. And I was not too poor to be in any place. Not anymore.